According to the yoga tradition, there are three qualities or three energetic forces that are always present to various degrees in all things and beings in the world. These qualities are the three gunas, rajas, tamas, and sattva, and each of them has its own unique attributes. Those qualities are always present in our emotional states and in our interactions with the world. You can think of them as a spectrum with sattvic energy of clarity and balance in the middle, hectic, disorganized, rajasic energy on one end, and slow, heavy, and stagnant tamasic energy on the other. When we're dealing with our inner state, it helps to recognize where we are on that spectrum so that we could use proper tools to move ourselves toward the sattvic middle. When we deal with anxiety, we tend to find ourselves on the rajasic end of the spectrum. And this means that to move toward the middle, we need to find a way to discharge some of that excess energy, ground it, and redirect it in some way. And this is exactly the kind of practice that my friend and colleague Alison Wesley has for us today. She will encourage you to play with the qualities of stability and mobility, to highlight different sides of you, the fierce side, the go with the flow side, the curious side, and so on, so that you could experience the changeable versions of yourself and also the deeper core that remains unchanged.
Hi everyone, Alison Wesley here. I'm going to share a practice with you that has some of the aspects in it that can help calm anxiety. A few things that you might need. You might not need any props, but if for things like balance poses, for warrior poses, if you like to have a chair nearby for balance, you might have one of those available. Also, if you practice warrior in a chair, right, I'm going to be demonstrating this standing today, but if you practice your warrior in a chair, also have that available. I think that's pretty much it as far as props go. And we're going to start with some movement. So your feet can come about outer hip distance apart. And we're going to start with a swivel of the hips. So if I swing one heel up and away from the ground, it's going to turn my hip. And once you get that going, you can let your arms go and let your arms just be swung. They're swinging around. Your hands can gently tap wherever they land on the body. And why might I have you start with movement? Well, when we're experiencing more kind of anxiousness, we have more movement within us, right? It's why we fidget and that kind of thing. So we're going to meet ourselves where we are and start with motion. And we can add some imagery to this. So maybe there's some kind of like gunk, like metaphorical gunk that you can imagine you are sort of freeing yourself of. So as you swing, anytime your arms sort of fling outward, can you imagine like releasing that gunk? And I always add the extra image that, that gunk becomes food and nurturing for something else, right? It like feeds the flowers. Maybe it's something that you didn't get to say, something inside. Let it go as you swing. Let's take maybe 4 more. And then you can just slow everything down and start to come to a stand. Let's do one more practice that involves moving. So this is actually a shaking out practice. You can bend your knees just a little bit and take one hand and arm and just let it start to shake. Right? Similar to that, like the gunk that we just imagined we were freeing ourselves of. Imagine you're shaking out any tension, Right? Any like sticky thoughts, let them shake out through your fingertips like dirty water. And maybe you can shake that in slightly different directions. So out and across. And the muscles are flopping around the bones, really getting that shake. And then release. Come back to center. Super important moment. Just feel the two sides. Notice if that shake feels a little bit more now relaxed, if you feel a bit more free, tingly, alive on that side. Let's try it out on the second side. So again, you can bend your knees just a bit so we're not gripping anywhere. Just nice and buoyant, and give that shake. And notice that the shaking also invites a deeper breath. We almost have to breathe a little bit lower in the body for this shake. Really let the muscles flop around the bones and shake in different directions. So like you're flinging out the water, making room for clean and clear, fresh water. And then you can release. Notice how that feels. Okay, so we're just doing a snippet of this. Of course, you could shake more, or you can shake your hips and your legs. Let's move on to one more piece of this that just helps you get a little bit more focused. And this is where it might be nice to hold on to something. So we're going to tap now, like tap, tap, tap. We're going to tap the calves using the top of one foot. So I'll turn around to show you this from the back side here. So I'm going to hold on to my wall. We're not aiming at any kind of balance. I'm just going to pick up one foot and give a little tap up and down the back of the calf. This is pretty effective pretty quickly. So after a few of these, and I have a slight bend to my standing leg, I'm going up and down. Even after just a few, you can release and you might notice a little bit more groundedness, a little more awakeness on that side. Let's finish it out with the second side. And this might also feel like, wow, that's a lot of sensation, right? We're turning on the connectors, the receptors that communicate between body and brain. So we're giving ourselves quite a lot of volume potentially. Now, why do we feel so relaxed after that tap once we have those lines of communication open? Right? We're like very aware of that calf. If there was tension there, now it can be released. So just notice your stance after we did a little shake, we did a little tap. And then from here, you can bring one hand to the belly and one hand to the chest. You can let your eyes soften closed, or you might keep just a slight opening to the eyes, just soft gaze. And invite your attention to really climb inside and be here. Be in this body, this moment, this concoction of sensation as you feel the breath moving beneath your hands. And the next few aspects we'll explore are the different versions of ourselves, the different avatars that we can meet throughout any yoga practice. So let's begin with finding the version of ourselves that's very sturdy. You can start to release the arms and in fact turn your palms to face forward. You can splay your fingers and give a push down through your fingers. So this is the mountain pose, Tadasana. See if you can imagine your sturdiest version of yourself. Maybe that comes from memory. Maybe it's total imagination. Maybe you're seeing a different character in your mind completely. But pause here, a few strong cycles of breath. Really focus on the exhalation, sturdy. Like, what is it like to really stand on your own 2 feet? Let's continue with this avatar, right, of strength. You can take your palms together and the feet still about hip distance apart, Bring a bend to your knees like you're about to have a seat in a chair underneath you. So it's more of the ledge of your seat moving into that chair than it is the knees coming forward or the torso coming forward. Take a full inhale here, and as you exhale, slowly straighten up with the legs. Take the arms by your sides, palms facing back, and press back. See if you can really feel the muscles of the backs of the arms. Let's continue this nice and slowly. So maybe you inhale to find that imaginary chair, and you might exhale to slowly straighten the legs and press the arms back. And this is one version. If you find you'd like to move slower than you breathe, that's fine. Just breathe. Let's stay with that character, that version of ourselves that's sturdy. We can imagine like a resource of strength. And even if as we explore this, if there's ever a moment where there's doubt, like, yeah, that's not me. Imagine you're trying on a character, like trying on a version of sturdiness, strength. One more time through this flow. And we're going to go a little deeper into this. So from here, you can bring your palms together. Just come back into the mountain pose. This is where you might like to have a chair or something in front of you or nearby for some balance. See if you can now conjure up your version of yourself that you would send into conflict. Be as imaginative as you can, like the warrior version of yourself. And again, maybe it's you. Maybe you're seeing a totally different character. Once you have that really focused in your mind, bend the knees just a bit like you're about to find that chair, but keep the weight in just the right leg. Stretch back with the left and come into warrior one. Okay, so the back foot, the heel is in, the toes turn out. See if as you bend that front knee, it's as if both legs are moving away from each other, like the feet are really pulling at the ground, like pushing at the ground, I should say. Rise up with the spine. Take the arms overhead. Now, maybe your warrior has the palms facing in with the hands apart. Maybe instead you do the temple mudra with the fingers interlaced and the index fingers skyward. Now, as you find the physical stance for this, imagine really feeling into the earth. So like the underside of your front thigh could actually settle just a little bit. Find a few fierce breaths, like tapping in to that version of your warrior. And anytime you'd like, if you're in a space you can make sound, you might exhale from the mouth. Strong, fierce, like dragon, right? Exhale. One more round of breath. Then you can release. Straighten up with the leg. You can bring your hands down to your hips and then bring a bit of weight forward. Unplug the back heel, step or slide in. So now we're going to be on the right foot. Now, option one of this would be hands to a chair, right? Coming into warrior three. Version two would be hands together. You could bring your palms together. There's lots of options of warrior three, so make this your own. If you'd like to get creative with the arms, feel free. But find that strong, fierce breath. This is the moment in the warrior story of triumph, of like, I've won. Can you imagine that character? Take another full exhalation here, and as you inhale, you can start to bring that bottom foot back down to the ground, rise up, come back to your sturdy mountain pose. Bring your palms to face forward, push down with the fingertips. Again, can you find that version of your warrior in your mind? Really see it, imagine it, embody it. Bring the palms together, find that slight seat like you're about to find a chair. And then the weight now in the left leg, slide the right leg back for the warrior one, Virabhadrasana one. So the back foot toes can turn out to your comfort. The chest, the eyes are looking forward, even though the legs are really moving apart. Now, as your spine rises up and you take the arms skyward, right? Your warrior, your palms are in or maybe interlaced to your fingers, and the index fingers are like piercing the sky. Can you embody that fierce, strong, capable character, the one you'd send into conflict? Right, strong breath again if you'd like. Exhale from the mouth. Feel the earth beneath the toes without needing to grab at the earth with the toes. Another round of breath here. And then you can release your hands. Bring the hands to the hips. You can straighten the front leg and take a few steps in to come into the warrior three. In version one, hands to a chair seat, stretching back with that back leg. Version two, palms can come together. Again, you can get creative. Wherever you are with this, a few strong breaths. Like feel the breath really deep into the belly. And see if you can feel your foot strong on the ground without needing to grab at the ground. Take another full exhale. And from here, as you inhale, you can lower with your right foot, rise up, and then bring your arms down to your sturdy version, sturdy avatar. Like I'm standing on my own 2 feet. And as we start to make our way closer to the ground, right, if you've had to move chairs or furniture, you can move that chair out of the way. We won't need that again. You can bring your palms together. And the next time you breathe in, let your arms float out and up. Now, as you exhale, fold your palms, bend at your knees, bend at your hips, and bow in over the legs for Uttanasana. Feel free to bend the knees as deeply as you'd like, so your hands can come down in the direction of the ground, and really let your head go. So this is the version of ourselves that can change. Right? Notice that what you're looking at between the 2 legs is totally upside down. Like we've just been able to change our perspective. Can you find something behind you that you can look at like, wow, I've never seen it look like that before? Take a full exhalation. As you inhale, bring your hands to your shins, come up toward halfway. And then from here, make your way down to the knees. You can step your way down to all 4s. And of course, throughout this, make it yours. If you want more cushioning, more padding, use whatever you need to make this work. My hands are going to be relatively underneath the shoulders. And then from here, as you'd exhale, round through the spine, cat pose. As you'd inhale, gently arch and extend for cow pose. Now, possibly throughout, if you like, you can soften your gaze, you can close your eyes completely, but as you exhale and round, inhale and extend, see if you can feel the version of yourself emerge that can go with the flow. Like, how different is this avatar from the warrior version of ourselves? The version of ourselves that can bend, that can go along for the ride, that doesn't necessarily have a plan, but can be moved. Twice more. Now, as you complete this next exhalation in the cat pose, you can start to unfurl and come back around to all fours. We're going to come into a bit of a resting shape. So version 1, puppy pose, where your hands are, you can lower to your forearms. Just a little bit gentler on the knees. Still a lovely resting pose. You can let your head rest between your arms, right? Let your belly relax, but feel some space in the backs of the ribs. Version 2 is child's pose with the knees a bit wide. Let your hips stretch back. Maybe your arms stretch out in front of you. And see if as you rest in either your puppy pose or your child's pose, can you feel the breath moving through the body? Starting to illuminate the version of ourselves that can be a bit quiet, that doesn't need to be entertained, that doesn't need to do, that can be. Any of these versions can feel really familiar or really unfamiliar. So we're just trying them on, like touching in on that aspect of, I can just be here. And can you be here for another exhale? You can then make your way back up to all fours and then swing around to a seated position to then make your way down onto your back. And you'll need just a little bit of room off to each side for this. Laying down onto your back. Go ahead and begin with your feet wide. So if you're on a yoga mat, as wide as the mat with your knees bent, you can let your arms come out to a wide T. And then take a few rounds here of the windshield wiper. So you can let both knees swivel to one side and then flowing back up and over to the opposite side. And again, maybe you just breathe. Maybe you inhale through center and exhale in one direction. And we can start to touch in on the aspect, the version of ourselves that is a bit curious, that can explore. It doesn't have to be right, doesn't have to know the answer. And I'll just give you some options to play with and to explore in this movement. So one version is to focus a little bit more at the knee that's coming in. So I'm going to my left. I'm going to focus a little bit more at my right knee, rotating in. Kind of explore that sensation. Like, oh, I can't really know what that's like unless I try it. Let's try the exact opposite. So now let's say you go to your right. Keep the right knee where it is. Let the left knee swivel up and out. So this is going to give you more of exploration through that stretch of the inner thigh. Eventually the left knee would come to the left, the right knee follows. And I'll say that all again. So this version, we'd focus on the top knee coming up and out, 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 out. Like at some point you'd be in this inner thigh stretch and eventually reeling that other knee back over. Still breathing. between those two choices, see if you can find a version that feels interesting, feels the most interesting today. And possibly it surprises you. Tapping into that part of ourselves that can be surprised, that doesn't already have it all figured out. And you can take your version of windshield wiper for a ride one more time each direction. And when you do start to come to center, so just gradually as your feet come back to the ground, as your knees come back up, we'll start to find our way to Shavasana, to a resting position. Everyone's a little different with this, so you might choose to keep your knees bent and your feet on the ground. You might like to let your legs straighten out or use any props, blankets underneath you that feels right. And then you might find a focal point just nice and easy above you at the ceiling. There's no need to really look outward at that focal point, but just slowly start to soften around it. You can let your eyes blink closed. And throughout most of this practice, as we've tried out different changeable versions of ourselves, these different avatars and aspects that we can experience, right? Throughout that, there's been something unchanging. The part of you that is observing, the part of you that is aware. And see if as you rest here, imagine resting back into that place. Kind of your deepest, vastest, most endless sense of self with a capital S, the part of you, the essence of you that is unchanging and completely aware. And from that place of observation, like your deepest sense of self, the standing inside, looking out, start to observe and feel the breathing. Notice there's a certain rhythm to the breath as it flows in and out. And you can begin to gently count along with your inhales and exhales. I'll give you an example of counting to 4. Right? If that happens to match your breath, you can be inhaling for that count and exhaling for that count. As you're evening out the breath, you're breathing in and out for the same count. allow there to be that really natural pause between the breaths. We'll just explore elongating the exhale by a count. So if you're breathing in for 4, begin to exhale for 5. You can make this vivid as if hearing the sound of your own internal voice counting. You might explore elongating the exhale by another count. So, for example, if you're breathing in for 4, maybe now you're breathing out for 6. And nothing you need to force at any time. You can find the count that works best for this moment. Possibly you elongate the exhale for another count. So if you're inhaling for 4, you're exhaling for 7. If ever you get lost, imagine the sound of your voice is at a whisper. You really have to listen in to hear it. Possibly you elongate the count by one more until you're breathing in, possibly for 4, and breathing out for 8. Or you were breathing out twice the time it takes to breathe in. Gradually, you can allow the counting to fade. And just notice your experience. Notice the sensations through the body. Notice if you feel your pace has slowed. And just as you're ready, you can invite some movement back into your fingers and toes. You can bring a bend to your knees. And just take your time rolling to one side, coming to any seated position. let your eyes soften closed. You might just hold a soft focal point. Bring your palms together. And really useful here to take a moment to feel and recognize, acknowledge any shift you notice. And if there's something nice, something improved, can you name it? I can use my example right now. I'm feeling very grounded. And possibly as you find that word or that name of how this feels, now we've made a compartment in the mind we can pull from later when I need to feel grounded. And today we can send thanks to whatever allowed you time and space to practice. And I thank you for being there. Thank you for sharing your time and space. Thank you. And just to recap a little bit of what we just traveled through. So we started with movement, with motion, right? Shaking free. Then we focused on different versions of ourself. And the truth is, if we can experience all these different changing versions, it reminds us that anything we're going through is also changeable. And then we came to a rest and we focused on a breathing practice very useful for times of anxiousness, where we slowly elongated the exhale. So those are just a few things I hope you find are useful. Feel free to share your experiences, and thanks for trying this out.